Welcome to this edition of Eyes on Naperville. Here's your host, Kevin Dolan.
Welcome to Eyes on Naperville. This month, Eyes visits some of our servicemen, some of our very special servicemen. Naperville is a community that really does appreciate, I hope my guests will agree, really appreciate those who gave their service, and especially those who lost their life or were injured in any way in the service. And our VFW hall is probably one of the best VFW halls in the country. Very active and just an awful lot of wonderful people and wonderful things. We went from a female director of the VFW hall here, and now we have a male, and back to a man, by the way. And it is my pleasure to welcome Bob Bronson.
Thank you very much.
Our VFW commander. Commander, please tell me, how long have you been commander now?
Just about a month. Our former commander, Nina Petru, she served 2 years as commander. She left office in late June, right after our Department of Illinois annual meeting, and I took over effective July 1st.
Bob, was she the first female who headed up the...
She was the first woman commander of the VFW. Okay. We have women members, but she was the first woman member, and Nina did an outstanding job. She was commander for 2 years, and she did a great job for the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and she's still, of course, a very active member.
I understand she was over in Desert Storm.
She was an Air Force veteran of Desert Storm, yes. She spent 20-plus years in the United States Air Force. She retired as an Air Force Master Sergeant. She was a career person. And she was a very welcome addition to the VFW as a member and as a commander.
Mm-hmm. I am very proud of my son, who was in the 82nd Airborne over in Desert Storm, and not only proud but happy to have him back home, all these years. Well, tell me, Bob, what's going on at VFW right now? Is there anything coming on? I know we have a fundraiser coming up, right?
Well, the Veterans of Foreign Wars we're very active in all areas of the community. Our stated mission is to be there for veterans who have served their country. We support veterans. Actually, they're not veterans until they leave the service, but we support our folks on active duty, our reservists, our retired folks, and our veterans. And everything we do at the Veterans of Foreign Wars is built around service to veterans, and that is also service to the community in which we all live. And you mentioned at the start of the program about how Naperville supports its veterans, and I would agree with that. I've lived in several places around this country. I've never seen a city like Naperville that has such a civic part of its daily life being honoring the troops that have served. The Riverwalk, honor roll down there. I often tell people that newcomers to Naperville that if you walk down there and you take a look at the names of the people that have given the ultimate sacrifice in all of our wars, you will see names on there like Naper, Clow, Beidelman, and even someone that's only spent a short time in Naperville. If you've been by a building or been by a street, you'll recognize the names of some of the founding members of our community. And so Naperville has had a history of giving its sons and daughters to the service of their country. And it's shown through the treatment and the recognition of veterans, and we're happy to be a part helping them do that.
And I think one way, and I'm sure you'll agree, one of the best ways, at least we know what we can do, is the parade. The parade every year, seeing everybody. I enjoy seeing the quarter tons come in with some different troops in them, and all of the services represented, and it's really a very nice tribute. And people along the line, our exchange club, we do nothing but carry flags, but they even give us a big applause, just coming along with the American flag. But it's a very special day. And,
no one that has ever marched with the veterans on Memorial Day is ever quite the same since.
I agree.
The recognition that you receive, and I always want to watch out of the corner of my eye the men or women who are marching for the first time, and here are the people cheering, and there's always a moist eye. And it doesn't matter where you served. You know, guys such as me, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and when we came back from the service, there wasn't much of a welcome home. Anyone that lived and remembers the 60s and the 70s understands that was a different time. And we weren't particularly welcome back from a war that nobody wanted to fight. Many of us waited for years and years before joining a veterans organization because we didn't really want anybody to know we served in Vietnam. So coming into that situation for a guy like me and some of my fellow Vietnam veterans, seeing this huge crowd, this was something else. Fortunately, the country has moved on from that experience. And our folks that have returned home from Desert Storm and Iraq, Afghanistan, the Global Expeditionary Force, and the War on Terror, wherever they served, they're receiving the kind of welcome from their communities that they deserve. And we kind of think in the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion and the other folks in town that you mentioned, the Exchange Club, the Kiwanis, Operation Support Our Troops, they're getting the kind of recognition they deserve. And Memorial Day, to me, is just a manifestation of that. So you take pride in it, and you really want to give back to the community. You want to do what you can.
Another thing, I had Mike McGrath, your good friend, not too long ago, and we talked about your wonderful house up there. Now, it's called exactly what up in Lansing, Michigan?
All right, what you're referring to, of course, is the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Home for Children. And it's not really one home. It's a big development with a lot of homes. And it's in Eaton Rapids, Michigan, which is just outside of Lansing. And the National Home for Children opened up, I would say it's been many years now, simply because there were orphans of veterans who had no place to live. There were widows with families of veterans that had no place to live, homeless people. And the VFW recognized its obligation to these people. And so to make sure that Vietnam members' families were taken care of, this National Home for Children was formed. And right now, Illinois, for instance, has 2 houses that the State Department of Illinois, we fund it, and we have an annual Illinois Day up there in which ourselves and other VFW members from around the state go up, and we take part in little ceremonies and talk to the folks up there. It's a very worthwhile cause, and of course, operating something like that takes money. And so we have various fundraisers. We recently had one of our most popular fundraisers ever over at the VFW post. Any of your viewers that took place in the Judathon that was held over right on the park area behind the VFW, our .1K race, we use the term loosely, but we had some great sponsors. We had almost 300 entrants, and so we raised quite a bit of money for the VFW National Home that day. And it's an ongoing labor of love for us. We're very happy that one of our members, Mike McGrath, whom you just mentioned, Mike is a past commander of the VFW post. He is also the Department of Illinois National Home Representative, and beginning very soon, he will be on the Board of Trustees. And so it's a very good thing for us to have Mike as a representative, and I think it kind of shows the closeness that we in Naperville have with our national home.
Yeah, not only an honor
That's
for
just
Mike,
one of the things that we raise money for.
Not only an honor for Mike, but for your VFW
Yes,
post.
well, that's the way we look at it.
Obviously. You know, I have a question with you. We alluded to it a short time ago. How do fellows, and you're one of them, fellows from Vietnam and so on, react to those coming back, well, Desert Storm, Kuwait, Iraq, several skirmishes and wars, whatever you want to call them, that have happened since then, and they've all been welcomed back. I think America's finally making up for all that time. But how do you feel about that?
Well, you know, it's a good question, and I would like to answer it by telling you one of the things that we do as a post with the schools in Naperville. Both school districts we work very closely with. And one of them, matter of fact, Dr. Tracy Cook of the History Department at Neuqua Valley High School, she has Vietnam War as part of her history class. And so she has several of us come over a period of 3 or 4 days and talk to our students. And that's exactly the question that they ask. What was it like coming home? And then also there present, Dr. Cook also has a couple of the recruiters from the local Army office who are Army, active duty Army folks that have served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and contrast that with what they're, our folks coming back from Vietnam had a tough time. We had a couple of members of our post were actually physically assaulted when they were discharged at an Oakland Army base. So there was some pretty bitter feelings about that. But you know, that was part of really what was going on in the country. You had the people and the media at the time were very anti-war, and unfortunately a lot of that war was transferred back to the servicemen. That has now changed. Okay. What now has happened is that people that recognize that you get into war for a lot of reasons, and whether you're for a conflict or against a conflict, you don't let that color your opinion of the individuals that have done their duty, they've done what they've been told, and they've gone and they've accomplished their mission, and now they're coming back. And that's what I think has changed over the years. I think that the American Legion and the VFW, our posts in Naperville, by the way, we're very close together. I think we've helped try to be a part of that, try to put forth that notion that, hey, these are guys and gals that, you know, did their duty as their country saw it. And so regardless of what you think about the mission that they undergo, remember that they served their country and some of them suffered for it. So I think the country's got it right. And in Naperville, we certainly do have it right.
Right. In the parades, I noticed when the cars come by with commanders, excuse me, with commanders or officers or enlisted men, whatever, from Marines or from whatever war they're in, they're represented that way. The Vietnam War and so on, each of them.
Yes, our World War II veterans, my father was in World War II, and typical of the World War II generation, when they came back from the war, they didn't talk about the war. They didn't need to talk about the war, because at that time, every able-bodied man that could pass a physical was in the war, was serving in the armed forces in some capacity. So when the war was over and they all get back home, they don't need to talk about the war. You don't need to ask my dad what he went through in the war, because, hey, I went through it too. You know, they'd get together, they'd talk about everything but the war. And it wasn't until years later that, you know, you'd begin to learn some of the experiences, because at the time, that wasn't really on their mind to talk about it. Today, we're losing our World War II veterans at a rapid rate. We have World War II veterans as members of our post, and it's just too bad that we seem to be going to funerals more often than not. But that was the greatest generation, and they certainly are getting the recognition that's due. It's no exaggeration to say they saved the world.
Mm-hmm. I think the one thing that's often seen around town, whenever a veteran walks by, you'll have some of us who were not veterans like that and just simply say thank you. You know, that alone means something.
World War II veterans appreciate that probably more than anything you could say to them.
Yeah.
A lot of them now are infirm, they're in ill health, and they can remember the days of their youth. They can then now, you know, go back and reflect. You know, in my older years, I can reflect about what happened when I was in the service. We have all sorts of military veterans represented in the VFW. We have folks that saw a lot of heavy combat in Vietnam and in other areas, and then we have folks that didn't see a lot of the heavy action like I did. I didn't see a lot of the heavy action. We have some that saw no action at all, but they served in the war and they served in some kind. So we have a wide breadth of membership in the VFW, and the experiences that we have, we like to share with anyone, and particularly the school kids when they ask us.
Another time I get to see it, because I'm allowed to take part in it, given an invocation, is the 9/11 ceremony that we had just not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago or so, seemed 2 or 3 weeks ago, honoring Dan Schanauer, who was in the Pentagon building when it was hit. And he's a local boy, and of course his parents were there, and he was honored. But we honored all of those who took part. firemen and policemen and servicemen and all kinds. And we get to see it, and some are in uniform, some are not, but I think the people come out for that just to say thank you.
I don't think there's any question, and Naperville is unique in that regard.
That's nice to know.
It really, I mean, other cities, of course, have 9/11 Memorial.
they do.
I don't think anyone in a city our size pays attention to that as we do. And having a local boy, a local man, killed in 9/11 at the Pentagon drives home the danger that everyone in military engages in, whether they're on the front lines or like Commander Schanauer was, he was doing his job in the Pentagon. And all of a sudden, you know, this happens. So it drives home the fact that, you know, the kind of conflict that we're involved in now, and we talk about on the 9/11 ceremony, is the kind of conflict where you never know what's going to happen. And I think that's the.
I urge all those people, all those wonderful civilians out there who do appreciate it, might consider coming next year, because the ceremony, Marty is one of our Exchange Club members, Marty Walker, but he's the one who makes it all happen. And he did a wonderful job. And of course, we see again all the representatives there, but we have the Naperville Choir, the men's glee club, and bagpipers, and the police are taking part, and the fire department's taking part, and everybody. It's really a very, very nice ceremony and very fitting for that. But I think I get a kick, and many of us do, of seeing the veterans there and taking part.
And I think that what the veterans appreciate seeing there is all the school-age kids we see there. I mean, this is the type of thing that they should know. And we, like I mentioned before, that we, as a post, do have a close relationship with the schools. And many of the kids will recognize some of our fellows that visit the schools when they've seen the Memorial Day parade or they've seen the 9/11 ceremony. And one of the things that we like to do to make sure that the kids stay interested in things like this is, for instance, we offer a couple of programs for essay contests. Our junior high program is called Patriots Pen, and for the high schoolers, it's called The Voice of Democracy, and they write an essay on a predetermined topic. And we have it's a very intense competition, and we are around all the schools, and the VFW does this statewide and nationwide. And this last year, the Illinois representative, she was a young woman from one of the downstate Illinois posts sponsored. She went on and won the national award, which was a $30,000 scholarship.
Wow.
Now that ain't bad.
No, that's not bad at all.
So these are the type of things that we see that we're trying to do with the community. And any parent that feels that would like his or her child involved in this, contact the Veterans of Foreign Wars up at our Naperville post, and we'll be happy to give you the information, because if you're in District 203 or 204, your districts are participating in it. But that, I think, is the payoff of that. When we go to the 9/11 ceremony or the 4th of July or the Memorial Day, we see so many of Naperville's young people. And, that, I think, is what makes me as veterans most
too.
happy.
I have the privilege of serving as youth director for the Exchange Club for many years, and I get to give out scholarships. So I'm on the podium with always a member of the VFW, as well as maybe Rotary and Kiwanis and so on, giving these out. And kids have questions, and they want to know things, no matter what war and so on. I think there is more reverence now for veterans than there ever was, except probably right after the Second World War, but I wonder if even they got as much recognition. They were too worried about assimilating again and getting jobs, and and I just hope that the nation, I don't remember it much, I was a very small boy, but I don't remember much except that they were welcomed back,
I think that's a very, very good point, because when our greatest generation, when they left World War II, they came home. Well, they came home to a country that had been through, 4 years of all-out war.
Yeah.
2 years before that, our factories were churning out war material for our allies before we were even in the war.
That's right.
So when they came back, the country needed everything. I mean, we needed buildings. We needed to reconvert our plants back to making consumer goods and automobiles, because we were making airplanes and ships. So This generation went from fighting a war to building the world's strongest economy ever, seamlessly. I mean, they just came right back and went to work. In Naperville, downtown, right off of Washington, the statues celebrate some of our veterans, World War II veterans. We have, at one time we had 6 Silver Star awardees that lived in Naperville. And they were all just regular guys, you know, that went off to war and came back and went right back to work at the local filling station, went right back to work at the, you know, oil and cars and all that stuff.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about them getting their jobs back. I hope that was true. I hope that was true.
Well, there were so many jobs available at that time.
Well, like your father, what was?
Well, he went into the steel business. The U.S. Steel Corporation all of a sudden needed salespeople. They didn't need salespeople before because all the steel went into the war. All of a sudden now they're figuring out, what are we going to do with this steel? No more war. Hey, we got to go hire somebody to go sell it. And so there were jobs available for these people when they came back, and they made the most of it, and they went right from saving the world into building the U.S. into the world's greatest economic power ever. And if you put those two accomplishments together, you got to say this is the greatest generation ever.
Yeah. You know, as Tom Brokaw calls it so many times, our greatest generation, you know, and they really did, and all of us, I think, have agreed that they really did save the world, because this was a demonic man over there, that Adolf Hitler
this was
guy.
bad stuff. It was really,
it could have been much worse, you know, and it wasn't because our troops were so. We all had the impression that our pilots were better, our fighters were better, our troops were better. Whether they weren't or not, they had very good commanders because we did win. And that's what's good. But it was good to see all those, and still. And I'm so impressed by Napervillians having reverence for all of those, not just those veterans. And like you say, we're losing too many of them.
Well, what our mission now is making sure that a lot of our veterans, not only from World War II, but also from the Korean conflict and Desert Storm right up to present day, are not forgotten, because many of them are still struggling. I mean, if you go to the veterans hospitals, particularly the recent conflicts, you know, military medicine's better than it ever is, and but we still see veterans coming home with severe physical disabilities. We see them with stress syndromes, and so they're in the hospitals, and Hines Hospital in Chicago is a very fine hospital.
Yes.
Twice a month, we at the VFW Post organize a visit to the spinal ward and the blind ward. And we go down, we play bingo with those guys, and they're from all areas of conflict. And they appreciate
the Second World War?
Well, they still may have one or two, but mostly you find the Vietnam Wars up to the present time. But you know, a lot of them are making their multiple trips to Hines Hospital. They have, like I say, the blind ward, the spinal ward. We had the Operation Support Our Troops, had the big Garrison East, Lieutenant Dan Band fundraiser out at Cantini Park. So we made sure that a lot of the blind and spinal units got transported from the hospital out to enjoy that evening.
Oh, that's great.
We have our fish fries up at the Post during Lent.
I was going to mention
during
that.
Lent.
Don't forget those.
During Lent.
When do they stop? Or just during Lent then?
Just during Lent.
Okay.
We go right before Ash Wednesday, and then go right to Good Friday.
Another opportunity for Napervillians to thank a veteran, because there's a lot of them there.
As Lent's, and it's going to be around here before we know it. Now that the snow's going to start to fly soon. It's right after Ash Wednesday. It's every Friday up through Good Friday. We have a fish fry at the Post, and prices are very reasonable. It's good food.
Very good food.
We have probably the most reasonably priced drinks in town.
Absolutely.
And it's a real nice get-together for the family, and it's a great fundraiser for the Post. All of our funds that we raise, regardless of what they do, go back into serving veterans, serving homeless veterans, helping with the homeless veteran stand down, which they do twice a year in Chicago. We collect coats and garments and toilet articles and everything that all of us take for granted that some of these homeless vets don't have. We make sure they all have them. So this is the type of thing that all of the funds that we raise go into doing this.
Right. How about some of those things that can go to the home up near Lansing for children? Clothes, can they bring them over to the Post?
Well, actually, that's not really needed at this time.
Okay.
Because these families, a lot of them have jobs outside the house. For instance, all the kids up there, they go to the local Eaton Rapids public schools. Okay? But now all of the funds raised go into the general fund, which does really what we need, is to make sure we keep the facilities up so they have a nice warm home, we keep the heat on, because anybody that owns a house knows what kind of expenses you go through.
Yep.
Think about owning,
Absolutely.
a few dozen houses. So that's really what the National Home Funding is, to making sure these families up here have a physical plant that they can live in and be happy in.
And I hope everybody hears that and knows that they can help in some way. Bob, thank you very much. This has been a pleasure. This is wonderful. Half hour went a little bit too quick, but thank you very much. Keep up the good work over at our VFW Hall, one we all take pride in.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for having us on.
Thank you. We'll see you next month with another session of Eyes on Naperville. Thank you.